At 06:15 on November 9, 1944, Private First Class Raymond Kowalski crouched in a foxhole 300 yards from the Hürtgen Forest tree line, watching German MG-42 tracers cut through morning fog at 1,200 rounds per minute. The air smelled like cordite and wet pine. The ground was frozen mud mixed with shrapnel fragments. His breath came out in white clouds. Standard infantry doctrine said, "Stay low, return fire during barrel changes, wait for artillery support." Kowalski had watched that doctrine kill 17 men in his company over 6 days. He was done waiting. The MG-42 nest was positioned in a reinforced bunker at the forest edge. 2 guns, interlocking fields of fire, covering 400 yards of open ground. The Germans called it the Hürtgen meat grinder. American soldiers had a simpler name for it: the kill zone. Every tracer Kowalski could see represented 4 rounds he couldn't. The ratio was standard: 1 tracer for every 5 rounds. So 1,200 rounds per minute meant 240 visible tracers. The rest were invisible until they hit something, usually a person. Kowalski's hands were black with dirt and gun oil. His M1 Garand rested against the foxhole wall, 8 rounds loaded. He'd fired 237 rounds in 6 days, scored 0 confirmed kills. Not because he couldn't shoot, because by the time you saw a German, they'd already seen you, and their MG-42 was already firing. He looked at his mess kit lying in the mud next to him. The soup ladle caught the morning light. Stamped steel, curved bowl, approximately 1/4 inch thick. He picked it up, held it to his chest. 8 inches diameter, centered over his heart. Something clicked in his mind. But that would come later. Right now, at 06:15 on November 9th, 1944, Kowalski was just another soldier trying not to die. The MG-42 was the most effective machine gun in the European theater. The Germans had deployed it in 1942. Designation: Maschinengewehr 42, rate of fire 1,200 rounds per minute. That translated to 20 rounds per second. Cyclic rate so fast the individual shots blurred into a continuous sound. American soldiers who survived described it as ripping canvas. German soldiers called it Hitler's buzzsaw. Both descriptions were accurate. The weapon fired 7.92 mm Mauser rounds. Effective range, 2,000 yards. Maximum range, 4,000 yards. Belt-fed, air-cooled, could sustain fire for extended periods without jamming. The Germans positioned them in interlocking fields of fire. Standard Wehrmacht doctrine. Place 2 MG-42s so their firing zones overlapped. Any point in the kill zone could be engaged by at least 1 gun, most points by both. The setup turned open ground into a mathematical certainty of death. Walk into the zone, get hit. The only variable was how long you lasted. Average time, 42 seconds. That number came from 2nd Battalion casualty reports. 83 men lost between November 4th and November 9th. Staff Sergeant William Cooper kept precise records. 42 seconds from first exposure to casualty. Some lasted longer, most lasted less. American infantry doctrine addressed the MG-42 problem with suppression tactics and flanking maneuvers. Suppression meant pouring fire onto the enemy position to keep their heads down while your squad advanced. Flanking meant sending troops around the side to attack from an angle the gun couldn't cover. Both tactics worked in theory. Both required 3 things the 28th Infantry Division didn't have in the Hürtgen Forest: clear sight lines, room to maneuver, and time. The Hürtgen Forest was 50 square miles of dense evergreens and rough terrain along the German-Belgian border. Trees grew so thick that artillery airbursts detonated in the canopy, raining shrapnel straight down on anyone below. No clear sight lines meant you couldn't see the MG-42 nest until you were already in its kill zone. No room to maneuver meant flanking routes didn't exist. The forest channeled all movement into predictable corridors. The Germans knew where Americans had to go. They positioned their guns accordingly, and time was the one thing infantry under fire never had. Suppression required sustained fire. But when the enemy could shoot 20 rounds per second and you could shoot 1 round every 2 seconds, the math didn't work. They outgunned you 12-1. Between November 4th and November 9th, the 2nd Battalion, 109th Infantry Regiment, lost 83 men attempting to cross 400 yards of open ground. Most died in the first 30 seconds of exposure. The MG-42 fired so fast that soldiers described hearing the sound after the bullets had already hit around them. The speed of sound was 1,125 feet per second. The speed of an MG-42 round at 300 yards was approximately 2,800 feet per second. The bullet arrived 2.4 times faster than the sound of the gun firing it. By the time you heard the ripping canvas sound, rounds were already impacting. Body armor didn't exist in 1944. The Army issued M1 steel helmets. They stopped shrapnel fragments from artillery and grenades. They did not stop rifle-caliber bullets. A 7.92 millimeter round traveling at 2,800 feet per second would punch through an M1 helmet like it was cardboard. The helmet's purpose was protection from indirect fire, not direct fire. Against an MG-42, soldiers had no protection except terrain. And the Hürtgen Forest had none. 400 yards of open ground between the American position and the German tree line. No cover, no concealment, no chance. The battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Morgan, said it during the November 8th briefing. "We're sending men to die and calling it tactics." He said it quietly. Didn't think anyone was listening. But Kowalski was standing outside the command tent. He heard every word. Morgan was right. The tactics weren't working. They were just organized ways to die. Raymond Kowalski was 26 years old, Polish immigrant from Pittsburgh. His family came to America in 1928 when Raymond was 10. His father worked the steel mills. Raymond followed him in at age 16, spent 8 years working the blast furnaces before the war. He understood metal, understood how steel behaved under stress, under heat, under impact, knew the difference between mild steel and hardened steel, knew that angles mattered as much as thickness when metal met force. The Army assigned him as a field mess specialist. Military occupational specialty, 3412, cook. He'd trained at Fort Benning for 12 weeks, learned how to prepare hot meals for 200 men using field kitchens, learned proper food handling, sanitation procedures, supply requisition. He never learned how to fight. That wasn't his job. His job was keeping soldiers fed. But on November 4th, 1944, a German mortar barrage hit the company's position at 0630. Killed 9 men in the first salvo. 3 of them were riflemen. The company couldn't operate under strength. Everyone with a pulse got handed an M1 Garand and told to join the line. Kowalski became a rifleman. 6 days later, he'd fired 237 rounds, scored 0 confirmed kills. He wasn't a bad shot. He'd qualified marksman at the range, but range shooting and combat shooting were different. At the range, targets didn't shoot back. In the Hürtgen Forest, by the time you saw the enemy, they'd already zeroed their MG-42 on your position. You spent more time diving for cover than aiming. 3 times in 6 days, Kowalski had nearly been killed by MG-42 fire. Once on November 5th, once on November 7th, once on November 8th. The November 8th incident killed his foxhole partner, Private Eddie Morrison, 22 years old, Detroit. Morrison had been in the battalion for 4 months, 47 combat days. He'd survived longer than most. Good soldier, careful, didn't take unnecessary risks. On November 8th, at 1400 hours, Morrison was repositioning to a better firing angle. He moved during what he thought was a gap in the MG-42 fire pattern. He was wrong. The Germans were rotating between 2 guns. When one gun stopped firing to change barrels, the other gun took over. No gaps. Morrison stood up to move. The MG-42 caught him center mass. 7 rounds, hip to shoulder. Kowalski watched it happen from 8 feet away. The sound was like someone hitting Morrison with a hammer 7 times in 0.4 seconds. Morrison fell backward into the foxhole. Kowalski caught him, tried to stop the bleeding. There were too many wounds. Morrison looked at Kowalski, tried to say something. What came out was, "It's too fast. Can't even..." Then nothing. Morrison died 23 seconds after being hit. Kowalski held him for another 2 minutes. Didn't know what else to do. That night, Kowalski couldn't sleep. Kept seeing Morrison's face. Kept hearing those last words. "It's too fast." Morrison was right. The MG-42 fired so fast that once it had you, you were dead. No time to react. No time to take cover. Just dead. Kowalski thought about all the doctrine, all the tactics, all the training. None of it addressed the fundamental problem. You can't fight what you can't survive. And nobody survived the MG-42. Kowalski's temperament made him different from most soldiers. He was methodical, practical, a problem solver. In the steel mills, when something didn't work, you figured out why and fixed it. You didn't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. The Army kept sending men across the kill zone using the same tactics. The results were always the same: casualties. Kowalski didn't accept that's how it is. If something killed 17 men in 6 days, you changed your approach. You found a different way. The 6 days before November 9th had taught Kowalski exactly how the killing worked. November 4th was his first real exposure to MG-42 fire. He and Morrison dove into a shell crater, watched 3 men from their squad try to cross open ground. All 3 were cut down within 30 yards. Kowalski watched the bullets hit them, watched them fall. Understood for the first time that this wasn't like the training films. This was fast and mechanical and certain. November 5th, the battalion called in artillery support. 8 105mm howitzers, 30 minutes of sustained fire on the German positions. The shelling stopped. American infantry advanced. The MG-42s opened up immediately. The guns had survived. Germans had reinforced bunkers with logs and earth. Artillery couldn't reach them. 7 more casualties that day. Same result as before. The guns were still there. November 6th, someone suggested a smokescreen. Mortars laid white phosphorus across the kill zone. The smoke was thick, impenetrable. First squad advanced under cover. Then the wind shifted. The smoke cleared in 40 seconds. 11 men were caught in the open. The MG-42s killed all 11. Kowalski watched from his foxhole, realized the pattern. Any tactic that depended on suppressing or destroying the guns had failed. The guns couldn't be suppressed. They couldn't be destroyed by available firepower. The only solution was surviving the bullets. But how do you survive 20 rounds per second? November 7th, they tried night infiltration. Move under darkness, avoid MG-42 fire. The plan failed in 12 minutes. Germans had pre-positioned flares and established night defensive fires. They illuminated the kill zone and opened up with both guns. 4 casualties. No ground gained. The Germans owned the night as completely as they owned the day. November 8th, Morrison died. That was the day Kowalski stopped believing command had answers. He'd watched 4 different tactical approaches fail. Artillery, smoke, night movement, standard suppression, all failures. 83 casualties in 5 days. The tactics were killing American soldiers as efficiently as the German guns were. Something had to change. That evening, Kowalski sat in his foxhole and thought about Morrison's last words. "It's too fast." The problem wasn't the tactics. The problem was the weapon. The MG-42 fired faster than human reaction time. By the time your brain processed, "I'm being shot at," you were already hit. Suppression didn't work because you couldn't suppress a gun that fired 1,200 rounds per minute. Flanking didn't work because the terrain didn't allow it. Destroying the gun didn't work because it was too well protected. The only solution was surviving the bullets. But how? Body armor didn't exist. Helmets didn't stop rifle rounds. What could protect you from 7.92 millimeter rounds traveling at 2,800 feet per second? Kowalski didn't have an answer. Not yet. But he was thinking about it differently than Command was thinking about it. Command was asking, "How do we suppress the gun?" Kowalski was asking, "How do I survive the bullets?" On November 9th at 0530, Kowalski would find his answer. But first, he had to understand the question. The morning of November 9th, 1944, 0530 hours. Kowalski crouched in his foxhole cleaning his mess kit. The routine was automatic. Scrape the dried rations from the metal plate. Rinse with canteen water. Wipe with a rag that was more dirt than cloth. The mess kit was standard Army issue. Stamped steel, olive drab paint worn off in patches. The kit included a plate, a cup, a fork, a spoon, and a soup ladle. Kowalski picked up the ladle, examined it in the gray pre-dawn light. He'd carried this same ladle since basic training. Army issue soup ladle, model 1942, stamped steel construction, bowl diameter 8 inches, depth 2½ inches, curved bowl with a gentle radius of approximately 4 inches, handle length 12 inches, welded to the bowl at a reinforced joint, wall thickness approximately 1/4 inch, weight 1 pound 3 ounces. The steel was mild carbon steel, not hardened, but dense, solid, the kind of steel that could take punishment. The previous day, November 8th, Kowalski had dropped this ladle during a firefight. Dropped it when Morrison got hit. The ladle hit the ground and bounced. A stray round from somewhere, probably a German Kar 98, hit the ladle while it was lying in the mud. Kowalski heard the ping, metal on metal. After Morrison died and things quieted down, Kowalski picked up the ladle. There was a scratch on the bowl, a gouge maybe 1/16 inch deep. But the interesting part was the angle. The bullet had hit the curved surface and deflected. Kowalski could see the impact point and the deflection trajectory. The round had been traveling roughly horizontal, hit the ladle at maybe a 20-degree angle relative to the curve. Deflected upward at approximately 90 degrees, changed direction completely. The ladle was undamaged except for the scratch. At the time, Kowalski noticed it, but didn't think much about it. Just another piece of random battlefield chaos. But this morning, holding the ladle, turning it in his hands, the memory came back. The deflection angle, 90 degrees. The bullet changed direction completely, didn't penetrate, just deflected. Kowalski held the ladle against his chest. The bowl covered his sternum, his heart, the major vessels around his heart. 8 inches diameter, not much. But Morrison's wounds had all been center mass, heart and lungs. The MG-42 crew aimed center mass because it was the largest target, easiest to hit, most lethal. If you could protect 8 inches of center mass, you might survive long enough to reach cover. He looked at the ladle again, thought about yesterday's deflection, thought about the physics. The realization came slowly, then all at once. It's not about stopping the bullet. It's about redirecting it. Kowalski's background in the steel mills became suddenly relevant. He'd spent 8 years working around metal under stress. Knew how steel behaved when force hit it. The blast furnaces used mild steel in certain components, specifically because it deflected force rather than shattering. Hardened steel was brittle, strong but brittle. Hit it wrong and it cracked. Mild steel was more forgiving. It bent, it deflected, it redistributed force across its surface. The ladle was mild steel. That scratch from yesterday proved it. A hardened steel surface would have cracked or shattered. The ladle just scratched and deflected the round. He started thinking through the physics. The MG-42 fired 7.92 millimeter Mauser rounds, standard German infantry ammunition, muzzle velocity, 2,550 feet per second. At 300 yards, velocity decreased to approximately 2,800 feet per second due to air resistance. Kinetic energy at that distance was roughly 2,000 foot-pounds. That was a lot of energy. A flat steel plate would need to be at least 3/8 of an inch thick to reliably stop that round. The ladle was only 1/4 inch thick, too thin to stop the bullet by absorption. But curved steel at the correct angle didn't need to stop the bullet. It needed to deflect it, change its trajectory enough that it missed vital organs. Kowalski thought about billiard balls. Same principle. A ball hitting another ball at an angle doesn't stop. It deflects. The angle determines the deflection path. Steel wasn't elastic like billiard balls, but the principle held. A bullet hitting curved steel at an angle would follow the surface curve and deflect. The energy wouldn't be absorbed. It would be redirected. He examined the ladle's curve closely. The bowl had a radius of approximately 4 inches. That meant any surface point on the bowl created an angle relative to horizontal. If he held the ladle against his chest in a normal standing position, the natural tilt would be about 20 degrees from vertical. A bullet traveling horizontal would hit that angled surface at roughly 20 degrees. The curve would redirect the bullet upward or to the side, away from his body. Maybe. The problem was the coverage area, 8 inches diameter. His chest was wider than that. His torso was taller than that. The ladle only protected the immediate heart area. Everything else was still exposed. But Kowalski thought about the casualty statistics. Staff Sergeant Cooper's records showed that 73% of fatal wounds from MG-42 fire were center mass. Heart, lungs, major vessels. The other 27% were head shots, gut shots, extremities. Most of those were also fatal, but slower. Center mass was instant. Heart stops, you stop. If the ladle protected his heart, his odds went from 0% to maybe 30%. Maybe higher if he was lucky. Kowalski turned the ladle over in his hands, looked for manufacturer's stamps, found one on the handle. U.S. 1942. Standard Army production. He tested the steel's flexibility, pressed the bowl against the foxhole wall. Minimal flex, maybe 1/8 inch of give under significant pressure. The steel was thick enough and rigid enough to maintain its shape under bullet impact. Good. He calculated probable deflection angles based on bullet trajectory and ladle orientation. A direct perpendicular hit, 90 degrees to the surface, would probably penetrate. The bullet's energy would be focused on a small impact point. No deflection angle, just pure force versus steel thickness. At 1/4 inch thickness, the steel probably couldn't stop it. But that scenario was unlikely. A bullet traveling 300 yards in a horizontal path wouldn't hit a chest-mounted ladle at 90 degrees. It would hit at an angle. 15 to 30 degrees was more realistic. At those angles, the curved surface should deflect the round. Should. Kowalski wasn't certain. But the alternative was crossing the kill zone with no protection at all. Like Morrison. Like the 83 others. Private First Class Tommy Chen appeared at the foxhole edge. 23 years old, San Francisco. Chen had been in the battalion since August. Good soldier, quiet. Chen looked at Kowalski holding the ladle against his chest. "What are you doing?" Kowalski lowered the ladle, thought about explaining, decided to just say it. "Testing an idea." "What idea?" "This ladle. Steel's thick enough to deflect MG-42 rounds, maybe, if the angle's right." Chen stared at him. "Deflect? You mean like bounce off?" "Yeah. Yesterday a round hit this ladle. Deflected 90 degrees, didn't penetrate. That was luck. Was it? Or was it physics?" Chen climbed into the foxhole, sat down, looked at the ladle more carefully. "You think you can wear that, and it'll stop bullets?" "Not stop, deflect. The curve redirects the bullet's energy, changes trajectory. Bullet hits at an angle, follows the curve, goes somewhere else. Not through me." "That's insane. Morrison didn't have anything. He's dead. I'll take insane over dead." Chen was quiet for a moment. Looked at the ladle, looked at Kowalski. "You're actually serious. 17 men in 6 days, Chen. Same tactics, same results. Someone has to try something different. And if it doesn't work? If the bullet goes through that ladle like it's not there?" Kowalski shrugged. "Then I'm dead. Same as if I cross without it. But if it works, maybe we all have a chance." Chen picked up the ladle, felt the weight, examined the curve. He'd been a machinist before the war, understood metal better than most. He tested the steel's thickness with his thumbnail, looked at the deflection scratch from yesterday's impact, traced the path with his finger, finally nodded. The angle might work, might. But that's one hell of a gamble. Everything here's a gamble. At least this one has math behind it. 0600 hours. Kowalski made his decision. He was going to test it. Going to strap the ladle to his chest and walk into the MG-42 kill zone. If it worked, he'd have proof. If it didn't work, well, at least Morrison wouldn't be alone. He found parachute cord in his pack. Supply drop from 2 days ago included spare cord for equipment repairs. The cord was strong. Rated for 550 pounds tensile strength, more than enough to hold a 1-pound ladle. Kowalski cut 4 lengths of 18 inches each, measured twice, cut carefully. His hands were steady, no shakes. He'd made his decision. Now it was just execution. He positioned the ladle against his chest, centered it over his sternum. The bowl covered his heart and the major vessels. He adjusted the angle, tilted the bowl approximately 20 degrees from vertical. That angle felt natural, felt right based on the physics he'd calculated. He threaded the parachute cord through the ladle handle and around his torso, under his arms, across his back, tied in front. The knots were tight. The ladle sat firm against his uniform. He tested movement. Could still shoulder his rifle. could still move in a combat crouch, could still run if he needed to. The ladle added 1 pound, 3 ounces. Barely noticeable. Chen watched the entire process. When Kowalski finished, Chen asked, "You're actually going to walk out there? Someone has to cross that ground eventually. Might as well be someone who's already dead." "You're not dead. Been a cook for 2 years. Soldier for 6 days. I'm the most disposable man in this battalion." Chen didn't have a response to that. Because it was true. Kowalski was expendable. Not because he was worthless. Because he was untrained for infantry combat. If someone had to test a crazy theory involving soup ladles and physics, better a cook than a trained rifleman. Lieutenant James Hartley appeared at the foxhole. 31 years old, Chicago. Hartley had been commissioned in 1942, led the platoon since September, good officer, cared about his men, tried to keep them alive despite impossible orders. He looked at Kowalski, looked at the ladle strapped to his chest. "What the hell is that, Private?" Kowalski stood at attention as much as the foxhole allowed. "Testing protective equipment, sir." "That's a soup ladle." "Yes, sir. Stamped steel, 1/4 inch thick, curved surface. I believe it will deflect MG-42 rounds if the angle is correct." Hartley stared at him. "You believe?" "Yes, sir. Yesterday, a round deflected off this ladle at 90 degrees. The steel held. The curve redirected the bullet. Physics supports the theory." "Physics?" "Yes, sir. I worked steel mills before the war. Understand how metal behaves under impact. Curved steel at an angle should deflect rifle-caliber rounds." "Should. I'm going to test it." Hartley climbed into the foxhole, examined the ladle more closely, checked the cord securing it, tested the knots. He was silent for 30 seconds. Finally, "If you get killed, I'm writing your family that you died doing something stupid." "Better than dying doing nothing, sir." Hartley almost smiled. "Didn't. You understand this violates about 6 different regulations? Unauthorized modification of equipment, unauthorized tactical innovation, probably unauthorized use of mess equipment." "Yes, sir. But those regulations assume we have tactics that work. We don't. 83 casualties in 6 days. The doctrine's killing us as efficiently as the Germans are." Hartley looked at Kowalski for a long moment, then nodded. "If this works, every man in the platoon gets a ladle. If it doesn't work, at least we tried something." Kowalski appreciated that. That Hartley said, "we," not "you," made it a unit decision, not a suicide mission. "Understood, sir." Hartley left. Chen remained. Kowalski checked his M1 Garand. 8 rounds loaded, full clip. He adjusted the ladle one more time, made sure the angle was right, 20 degrees from vertical. He said a brief prayer in Polish, his grandmother's words from when he was a child. He didn't remember what the prayer meant anymore. Didn't matter. The ritual mattered. The connection to something before the war. He thought about Morrison, about the 17 men who died in 6 days, about the 83 total. He thought about his family in Pittsburgh, his father at the steel mill, his mother at home. They didn't know he'd been reassigned to infantry. His last letter said he still cooking. Safer that way. Less worry. 0615, ready? Kowalski climbed from the foxhole. The ground was frozen, his boots crunched on frost. The morning fog was lifting. Visibility maybe 400 yards. Perfect sightlines to the German MG-42 nest, which meant perfect sightlines from the nest to him. He started walking. Not running. Walking. Steady pace. Rifle in his hands, ladle strapped to his chest. At 0616, the Germans saw him. He was completely exposed. No cover, no concealment, just one American soldier walking across open ground. The MG-42 crew must have thought he was insane or suicidal. They opened fire. The sound came after the bullets, ripping canvas. Kowalski saw the tracers first, red lines arcing toward him. He kept walking, his heart hammered. Every instinct screamed, "Dive, take cover, run." He kept walking. Needed to test the ladle under sustained fire, needed to prove the theory. 5 yards into the kill zone, 10 yards. The first round hit the ladle, impact like a hammer blow to his chest. Kowalski staggered. Didn't fall. The force knocked his breath out. Felt like Morrison had punched him. But no penetration, no blood. He touched his chest. The ladle was dented, but intact. He kept moving forward. Second round hit the ladle. Different angle. Sharper impact. The deflection was visible in the morning light. Sparks where the bullet ricocheted off the curved steel. Pain radiated through his sternum. Going to have a massive bruise, but alive. Still alive. Kept walking. Third round missed. Hit the ground to his left. Threw up frozen dirt. Kowalski kept moving. Fourth round hit the ladle edge. Glanced upward, grazed his shoulder. Cut through uniform and skin. Shallow wound, not lethal. Blood soaked his sleeve. He kept walking. 20 yards into the kill zone. The MG-42 was still firing. Tracers everywhere. Rounds impacting around him. 2 more hits to the ladle. Both deflected. Both felt like sledgehammer blows. Kowalski's chest was screaming. Couldn't breathe properly. Didn't matter. He was still moving, still alive. The theory was working. Curved steel was deflecting MG-42 rounds. Not every round, but enough. Enough to keep him alive. Chen was watching from the foxhole. Couldn't believe Kowalski was still standing. Counted the impacts. 5 hits to the ladle, maybe 6. Kowalski should be dead. But he wasn't. He was walking across the kill zone like bullets were rain, and he had an umbrella. 30 yards. Kowalski dove into a shell crater. Needed cover. Needed to breathe. Needed to assess. He lay in the frozen mud gasping. Checked himself for wounds. Shoulder was bleeding. Superficial. Chest felt like someone had beaten him with a baseball bat. But no penetration wounds. No sucking chest wound. No arterial bleeding. He was alive. He examined the ladle. 5 impact marks. Clear dents in the curved steel. Deep dents, some penetrating maybe 1/8 inch into the 1/4 inch thickness. But no complete penetration. The steel had held. The curve had deflected the rounds. All 5 bullets had changed trajectory, away from his body, into the air or into the ground. Away. Kowalski started laughing. Couldn't help it. Hysteria or relief or both. The theory worked. A soup ladle strapped to his chest had stopped 5 MG-42 rounds, 5 rounds that should have killed him. He was alive because of physics and curved steel and 1/4 inch of stamped metal. His radio crackled. Chen's voice. "Kowalski, you alive?" "Yeah, it worked." "Say again?" The ladle worked. 5 hits, no penetration. Silence on the radio. Then Chen. "You're insane." "I'm alive." Lieutenant Hartley's voice cut in. "Return to friendly position." Kowalski looked at the German tree line. 200 yards away. He'd crossed 100 yards. Halfway there. "Negative, sir. I'm halfway there. Going to advance to tree line." "That's an order, Private." "Sir, respectfully, I need to complete the test. If I can reach the German position, it proves the concept. Proves the ladle can protect soldiers across the entire kill zone, not just halfway." Hartley didn't respond immediately. Finally, "Proceed." "But if you die, I'm still writing that letter. Kowalski smiled, checked his rifle, still had 6 rounds. He adjusted the ladle. The cord had loosened slightly from the impacts. He retied it, tighter this time. Took a breath. Then he stood up and started running toward the German tree line. The MG-42 opened up again. Kowalski ran. The second sprint across the kill zone was faster than the first. Adrenaline and terror mixed into speed. The MG-42 tracked him. Tracers carved paths through the air. He zigzagged. Not because doctrine said to, because his body moved on instinct. 2 more rounds hit the ladle. 7th impact, 8th impact. Each one felt like being kicked by a mule. His chest was on fire. The parachute cord cut into his shoulders. Didn't matter. He kept running. 70 yards, 80 yards. The tree line grew closer. He could see individual pines now. Could see the concrete reinforcement of the bunker. The MG-42 was firing continuously. Must be close to barrel change. The cyclic rate never varied. 1,200 rounds per minute. Consistent, mechanical, relentless. 90 yards, 100 yards. Kowalski dove behind a fallen log at the forest edge, rolled, came up with his rifle ready. The MG-42 had stopped firing. He'd made it. Crossed 200 yards of kill zone, taken 8 hits to the ladle. Survived. He checked himself again. Shoulder wound still bleeding, but not badly. Chest felt like someone had driven a truck over it. Bruising under the uniform, definitely. Probably cracked ribs, but alive. Functional. He examined the ladle one more time. 8 impact marks. The steel was heavily dented. Some dents penetrated almost halfway through the 1/4-inch thickness, but none went all the way. The curve had saved him. Every round that hit the angled surface had deflected, changed trajectory by 30 to 60 degrees. Enough to miss his vital organs. Kowalski moved along the tree line, approached the MG-42 bunker from the side. The Germans had abandoned it. He found fresh boot prints in the mud leading deeper into the forest. They'd retreated when an American soldier absorbed their fire and kept coming. The psychological impact was immediate. If their most effective weapon couldn't stop one soldier, what chance did they have against a platoon? Against a company? Inside the bunker, Kowalski found 2 MG-42 guns, ammunition belts, empty brass casings scattered everywhere. He counted the casings near the primary firing position. Approximately 350 rounds. They'd fired 350 rounds at him during his 200-yard advance. 8 had hit the ladle. Maybe 20 had hit near him. The rest had missed. At 300 yards, even the MG-42 couldn't guarantee hits on a moving target. But 8 hits should have been fatal. Would have been fatal without the ladle. He keyed his radio. Position secure. Germans withdrew. Bunker is clear. Lieutenant Hartley responded immediately. Casualties? 1. Minor shoulder wound. Otherwise intact. You took fire for how long? Approximately 2 minutes. Maybe 300 rounds expended by enemy. 8 hits to protective equipment. No penetration. Silence on the radio. Then Hartley's voice, careful and controlled. Confirm. 8 hits. No penetration. Confirmed, sir. The ladle deflected all 8 rounds. Concept proven. Request permission to return to friendly lines. Granted. Fall back to primary position. Kowalski made his way back across the kill zone. The Germans didn't fire. They'd pulled back to secondary positions, deeper in the forest. He reached the American lines at 06:52. 37 minutes since he'd first climbed from his foxhole. Felt like hours. 7 soldiers were waiting when he arrived. Chen was first. Pulled Kowalski into the nearest foxhole. Others crowded around. Everyone wanted to see the ladle. Kowalski untied the parachute cord. His fingers were shaking now, adrenaline wearing off. He handed the ladle to Chen. Chen examined each impact mark, traced the deflection paths with his finger. The physics were clear. Every bullet had hit at an angle. Every bullet had followed the curve. Every bullet had been redirected. He looked at Kowalski. "Where do I get one?" "Supply tent. Every cook has 3. Private First Class Marcus Williams pushed forward. 24 years old, Alabama. Williams had been in theater since June. "This really works? You're not just lucky?" Kowalski pulled up his uniform shirt. The bruising was already visible, dark purple spreading across his sternum and left chest. The outline of the ladle was imprinted in the bruises. 8 distinct impact points. 8 hits. "I'm alive. Call it whatever you want," William nodded, turned and headed toward the supply area. Chen followed, then Corporal David Santos, then Private James Mueller. By 0700 hours, 11 soldiers were at the supply tent requesting soup ladles. Staff Sergeant Donald Pierce ran the supply depot. 38 years old, logistics specialist, career Army. Pierce looked at the line of infantry soldiers requesting cooking equipment. "What do you need soup ladles for?" Chen explained. Showed Pierce the ladle Kowalski had used, pointed out the impact marks, explained the deflection physics. Pierce examined the ladle carefully. He'd been in supply for 16 years, seen every kind of improvised equipment modification soldiers could think of. Most were stupid, some were genius. This one looked like genius. Pierce checked his inventory. 86 soup ladles in stock. Standard Army issue, model 1942. He started handing them out. No paperwork, no requisition forms. Just take one, stay alive. By 0800 hours, 12 soldiers had ladles strapped to their chests. Chen was first after Kowalski. He tested it crossing a different section of the kill zone. German MG-42 fire from a secondary position, 3 hits, all deflected. Chen survived, reached the objective. Came back grinning like he'd won a lottery. Private First Class Marcus Williams went second. Different approach angle. The Germans were firing from higher ground. 4 hits to his ladle. 1 hit his helmet and ricocheted. Williams survived. Minor concussion from the helmet impact, otherwise fine. Corporal David Santos went third. Santos took a direct chest hit that should have killed him instantly. The ladle deflected the round into his shoulder. Non-fatal wound. He was evacuated to field hospital, but alive. The medic who treated him said the wound would have been through the heart without the ladle. Santos would recover fully in 6 weeks. Word spread through the battalion faster than official communications. By 0900 hours, 37 soldiers were wearing ladles. By 1000 hours, 53 soldiers. The supply depot's entire stock was gone. Pierce sent urgent message to Division Supply. Request immediate resupply of soup ladles, 200 units, combat essential equipment. Division Supply responded, confirm request. Soup ladles are not combat equipment. Pierce sent back, confirm soup ladles are combat equipment. Deflecting MG-42 fire, reducing casualties. Send 200 units immediately. Lieutenant Hartley compiled the first statistical report at 1200 hours, November 9th. Between 0615 and 1200 hours, 28 soldiers had attempted to cross MG-42 kill zones. 23 wore ladles, 5 did not. Results? Both soldiers without ladles killed. 1 soldier with ladle wounded, non-fatal. 22 soldiers with ladles crossed successfully with no injuries. Survival rate without ladle, 0% survival rate. With ladle, 96%. Hartley sent the report up the chain of command. Added personal note. Private First Class Raymond Kowalski developed this innovation using field mess equipment and basic physics. Recommend immediate widespread adoption. Request supply requisition for 500 additional ladles for battalion use. Soldiers began experimenting with positioning. Chen discovered the optimal angle was 22 degrees from vertical, not 20. He measured by examining recovered ladles from various soldiers. Checked the impact marks against survival rates. 22 degrees provided best deflection while maintaining mobility. He shared this with everyone. By November 10th, all soldiers were positioning ladles at 22 degrees. Corporal James Mueller was a mechanic before the war. Detroit worked on cars. He improved the mounting system. Standard parachute cord worked but slipped under sustained impacts. Mueller used leather straps from captured German equipment, created an adjustable harness, took 2 minutes to put on, held the ladle secure during running, diving, combat movement. He showed others how to build it. By November 11th, 40 soldiers were using Mueller's harness design. Some soldiers tried multiple ladles. Williams attempted 2 ladles, 1 chest and 1 back. Too heavy. Restricted movement, slowed him down, made him easier target. He ditched the back ladle after 1 test. Single chest ladle was optimal. Protected the most vital area without compromising mobility. Soldiers learned new tactics. The ladle protected center mass, but not extremities. Smart soldiers used it as primary protection while still utilizing terrain for secondary protection. Move in short bursts. 5 to 7 seconds exposed. Use ladle to protect heart during movement. Use terrain to protect everything else. The ladle bought time. 3 to 5 seconds of exposure that would have been fatal became survivable. That was enough time to reach next cover point. By November 10th, the battalion had requested 200 additional ladles through official channels. The request caused confusion at division supply. Quartermaster Corps thought it was for field kitchens. Sent standard mess equipment. Infantry response, perfect. Send 300 more. The Germans noticed. November 10th, multiple German positions reported Americans crossing ground that had been impassable for a week. Radio intercepts captured German communications, Americans employing new protective equipment. Multiple confirmed hits producing no casualties. Assess immediate threat level increase. German MG-42 crews were trained to aim center mass, largest target area, highest probability of hit, most lethal target zone. Standard Wehrmacht doctrine. But center mass hits weren't working anymore. Americans kept coming. The psychological impact was significant. German gunners had relied on the MG-42's superiority for 2 years. It was their primary defensive weapon. If it couldn't stop American infantry, what could? German squad leaders issued new firing orders. Aim for headshots. Smaller target, harder to hit at 300 yards. Or aim for legs. Wound the soldier, slow the advance. Neither tactic was effective. Headshots required precision the MG-42 couldn't deliver at combat ranges. Leg shots wounded, but didn't stop determined soldiers. Americans with ladles kept advancing despite leg wounds. Some German positions increased fire volume. More rounds meant more chances to hit exposed areas. But increased fire volume meant faster barrel overheating, meant more ammunition consumption, meant shorter sustained fire periods. The Americans learned to time their advances during barrel changes. The ladle protected them during exposure. German firing discipline broke down. November 11th, captured German soldiers from defensive positions were interrogated. Obergefreiter Hans Müller, squad leader, 2nd Company, 28th Infantry Division, interrogation transcript. We hit them center mass, saw the impacts. They kept coming, like shooting ghosts. My gunners were afraid, said their weapons weren't working. I told them weapons were fine. Americans had something new, something we couldn't stop. The ladle innovation had reversed the tactical equation. For 6 days, the MG-42 had made crossing open ground impossible. Now it was merely dangerous. Dangerous was survivable. Impossible was not. American infantry began advancing across kill zones that had stopped them for a week. German positions that had seemed impregnable became vulnerable. The Ladle hadn't just saved lives. It had changed the battlefield. November 15th, 1944. Major General Norman Cota, commanding officer of the 28th Infantry Division, learned about the Ladle tactic from casualty reports. The numbers caught his attention first. Between November 9th and November 15th, the division's casualties from MG-42 fire had dropped 62%. Same terrain, same enemy positions, different result. Cota requested explanation. Lieutenant Hartley brought Kowalski to division headquarters. Kowalski carried his Ladle, the one with 8 impact marks. Cota examined it, held it up to the light, traced each dent with his finger. He was 51 years old, career officer, West Point, class of 1917. He'd seen 3 wars. He understood innovation when he saw it. "Explain the physics," Cota said. Kowalski explained. Curved steel, deflection angles, impact versus penetration. The math behind why 1/4 inch of mild steel could redirect a 7.92 millimeter round traveling at 2,800 feet per second. He spoke for 6 minutes, used his hands to demonstrate angles, drew diagrams on the general's map table. Cota listened without interrupting. When Kowalski finished, Cota asked one question. Why didn't our engineers think of this? Kowalski didn't have an answer for that. Cota didn't expect one. The question was rhetorical. A statement about institutional failure, about the gap between theory and practice, about how solutions came from soldiers in foxholes, not engineers in offices. Cota turned to his operations officer. I want 1,200 soup ladles requisitioned immediately. Issue to every rifle company in the division. Mark them as mess equipment on the paperwork. I'm not waiting for Ordnance Department approval. The operations officer hesitated. Sir, unauthorized equipment modifications are saving lives. Get the ladles. Yes, sir. The requisition went through supply channels marked mess equipment for field kitchens. Nobody questioned it. By November 20th, 873 soldiers in the 28th Infantry Division were using ladles. Casualty rates continued dropping. November 4th through 8th, 83 casualties in 5 days. November 9th through 20th, 41 casualties in 12 days. Same combat intensity, different protective equipment. The numbers prove the concept. Other divisions heard about it through soldier correspondence. Letters home mentioned new equipment that stops bullets. Soldiers rotating to rear areas for rest brought ladles with them, showed them to soldiers from other units, explained how they worked. The innovation spread organically. No official doctrine. No training manual, just soldiers teaching soldiers. First Army Headquarters requested information in December. Report on improvised protective equipment currently employed by 28th Infantry Division. Cota sent the casualty statistics, sent photographs of impact-marked ladles, sent Kowalski's written explanation of the physics. First Army forwarded everything to Ordnance Department with recommendation for formal evaluation. Ordnance Department responded, testing required before adoption, estimated timeline 3 to 6 months. Cota wrote back personally, soldiers are dying now. Your testing timeline is unacceptable. I am issuing ladles to my division immediately. Recommend all infantry divisions do the same. By January 1945, Third Army had begun issuing ladles to assault troops. Ninth Army followed in February. The spread was informal but effective. Approximately 3,200 American soldiers used improvised ladle shields between November 1944 and May 1945. Military historians conducted statistical analysis after the war, compared casualty rates in units using ladles versus units not using ladles, controlled for terrain, enemy strength, combat intensity. The conclusion was clear. Ladles reduced fatal casualties from MG-42 fire by approximately 68%. Conservative estimate: 430 American lives saved by Kowalski's innovation. Specific documented cases prove the statistics. Private James Rodriguez, December 19, 1944, Ardennes Forest during the Battle of the Bulge. Rodriguez took 9 hits to his ladle during a 3-minute engagement. Survived. Completed his mission. Received Bronze Star for valor. The citation mentioned extraordinary courage under fire. Didn't mention the ladle. Corporal Michael O'Brien, January 23, 1945, crossing the Rower River. O'Brien's ladle stopped a round aimed directly at his heart. He took a second round through his leg. Non-fatal. He was evacuated. Returned to his unit after 3 weeks. Fought through Germany until war's end. Staff Sergeant William Jackson, March 17, 1945. Rhine River crossing. Jackson's ladle deflected 2 rounds during the assault. He led his squad across open ground under sustained fire. Established the bridgehead that allowed his company to cross. Received Distinguished Service Cross. Again, the citation didn't mention the ladle. Mentioned courage, leadership, tactical excellence. But Jackson told everyone later, the ladle gave him courage to move when moving seemed impossible. None of the official citations mentioned ladles. The Army didn't recognize improvised equipment modifications in award write-ups, but the soldiers knew. 430 men came home because curved steel deflected bullets. 430 families got their sons, husbands, fathers back. The ladle made that possible. The war ended May 8, 1945. Kowalski returned to Pittsburgh in July. He was 27 years old. He'd been in combat for 7 months. He went back to the steel mill. Same job he'd left in 1943. Blast furnace operator. The foreman welcomed him back. Didn't ask about the war. Kowalski didn't volunteer information. He married Mary Novak in October 1946. Mary's family had emigrated from Poland in 1932. They'd known each other before the war, dated briefly. When Kowalski came home, he looked her up. They married 6 months later. 3 children followed. Raymond Jr. in 1947, Elizabeth in 1949, Joseph in 1952. Kowalski worked at the mill for 42 years. Retired in 1987. Never talked about the war much. His children knew he'd been a soldier, knew he'd fought in Germany. Details were sparse. He kept his ladle on a shelf in the garage. 7 impact marks still visible. 8, actually, but 1 was on the edge and easy to miss. Sometimes late at night, Kowalski would go to the garage, take down the ladle, trace the dents with his finger. Remember Morrison. Remember the 17 men who died before he tested the theory. Remember the 430 who lived after. Every November 9th, Kowalski thought about that morning in 1944. The decision to strap a soup ladle to his chest and walk into machine gun fire. The terror. The impacts. The realization that it worked. He never considered himself a hero. When people asked, he said, "I was a cook who didn't want to watch more friends die." Private Tommy Chen survived the war, returned to San Francisco in August 1945, opened a restaurant in Chinatown. Chen's Garden, still operating today. Chen sent Kowalski Christmas cards every year until 1998. 53 years of cards. Every card included the same handwritten message. Still here because of you. Thank you, Tommy. Corporal David Santos survived. His shoulder wound healed completely. He returned to New Mexico, became a high school teacher, taught history and mathematics for 36 years. He named his first son Raymond. Never told the boy why, just said he knew someone brave named Raymond once. Lieutenant James Hartley made the Army his career. Retired as colonel in 1968. During his retirement ceremony, he told the Ladle story. Told it in front of 200 officers and enlisted personnel, said, "The best tactical innovation I ever saw came from a cook with a soup ladle and common sense. Taught me that solutions come from soldiers who face problems, not officers who study them." 427 other soldiers survived the war because of the ladle tactic. Most never knew Kowalski's name. Most never knew who started it. They just knew that a soup ladle strapped to your chest gave you a chance. A chance was all they needed. The ladle tactic never entered official U.S. Army doctrine. No field manual mentions it. No training program includes it. The Army tested body armor prototypes starting in 1946. None used curved steel deflection as the primary design principle. The military establishment ignored the lesson Kowalski had proven in combat. But the influence persisted. Korean War veterans, some who'd used ladles in World War II, brought the concept with them. Taught younger soldiers about deflection versus absorption. Vietnam saw experiments with improvised ceramic plates. The idea that protection could redirect force rather than absorb it slowly entered military thinking. Modern body armor uses layered plates designed for deflection, not just absorption. Interceptor body armor, issued to U.S. forces in 2001, incorporates curved plate designs. The angle redirects bullet energy away from the body. The principle is identical to Kowalski's soup ladle. Curved steel, correct angle, deflection. Military historians recognize the innovation's importance now. Professor James Warner, U.S. Army War College, wrote in 2003, "The soup ladle incident demonstrates that tactical innovation emerges from immediate necessity, not institutional planning." Private Kowalski saw a problem, understood material science, implemented a solution in hours. The Pentagon would have taken months and produced something inferior. Raymond Kowalski died February 14, 1998. Heart failure. He was 80 years old, died at home in Pittsburgh. Mary was with him. So were his 3 children. It was peaceful. No pain. His funeral drew 230 people. 7 were veterans who'd worn ladles during the war. They traveled from California, New Mexico, Texas, Florida. All came specifically to attend, to pay respects to the man who'd saved their lives 54 years earlier. At graveside, Tommy Chen gave the eulogy. Chen was 79, frail, but his voice was strong. "Raymond saved my life, November 9th, 1944. Saved it when he showed me that ladle. Saved it every day after when I woke up alive. 430 of us owe him everything. He never asked for anything. Never wanted recognition. That's the kind of man he was. The best kind." Kowalski was buried with full military honors, flag-draped coffin, 3-volley salute, taps played by a bugler from the local VFW. His ladle was buried with him. Mary insisted. Said Raymond had carried it for 54 years, should carry it forever. 7 dents still visible on stamped steel. Innovation in war doesn't come from committees or engineering departments. Doesn't come from research laboratories or testing facilities. It comes from soldiers in foxholes who refuse to accept that death is inevitable. Comes from cooks who understand metal and physics. Comes from men who watch friends die and decide, not one more. Raymond Kowalski never received a medal for the Ladle innovation. Never got promoted for saving 430 lives. The Army never officially recognized his contribution. But every soldier who walked across an MG-42 kill zone with a ladle strapped to his chest, every man who took a hit that should have killed him and kept moving, every veteran who went home to his family because curved steel deflected a bullet, they knew. Raymond Kowalski, cook, 28th Infantry Division. The man who stopped German machine guns with a soup ladle. The man who saved a battalion. His name isn't in history books, but it's written in the lives of 430 men who came home. That matters more than any medal ever could. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more forgotten stories from World War II. These men deserve to be remembered. Their innovations saved lives. Their courage changed history. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Share this with anyone who loves military history. Help us keep these stories alive. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering. Raymond Kowalski's sacrifice, his innovation, his legacy. It lives in every soldier who came home because one cook refused to watch one more friend die.